For example, for us, feeder wheels take 6 weeks to make before we even talk about shipping. If I notice we have 3 weeks of stock left, we're screwed.
Yeah, we're super screwed. Yep. Hello and welcome to the Open Hardware Manufacturing Podcast, the podcast about making open source hardware. My name is Stephen Hawes.
And I'm Lucian Chapar.
And today we're talking about keeping up with orders, which is an intrinsic difficult thing for us of trying to bring our lead time down and how we manage what orders we have in the queue. There's a lot in this one. It's tricky. And yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right, let's get into it.
Let's do it. All right, hey everyone. No. So in today's episode, we thought it'd be cool to go into a deep dive around one of the most challenging aspects of manufacturing, and that's just keeping up with orders.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the harder things there is, but it's also rewarding because you're getting people their stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also an incredibly underrepresented problem that people have to deal with is like, it's really actually very complicated. And we've spent, especially you, has spent a tremendous amount of time thinking about how to make sure that we do it well and like accurately and not let stuff fall through the cracks. And like, there's a surprising amount to just making sure we get the right stuff out at the right time.
Yeah. I think of it as who makes what and when.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really boils down to that.
Yeah.
If you're not ahead of your orders, like shipping from stock on hand, it's just this precarious balancing act.
Yeah.
That, if you topple over, it can lead to a lot of upset people. And like our goals as manufacturers is to avoid that.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Manufacturing and order fulfillment is a beating drum, and like it must keep beating.
Yes, it has to keep beating. Or like if we know it's not going to be kept beating, we need to know at least as long as our lead time out ahead so that we can adjust the lead. Like it's like you said, it's a precarious thing.
Yeah, there's a lot that we're going to say about it too. But like ultimately another thing here is like the goal is to not be surprised by anything.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Consistency. No news is good news, as they say. It should just be like everything is even keel in the exact same way it was before. And like, that's the dream is there's no surprises.
Yeah. Granted though, the hard part of it is that it's, especially for like a direct to consumer model without resellers or distributors,
mm-hmm.
you don't know what you're going to sell.
Yes.
So you still need to be reactionary.
Yeah. It's a really weird mix of like, you have to kind of guess what's going to come in through the door in terms of order quantity, but you also have to make a lot of long-term decisions that are based on that guess. Like how many people do you hire? How much stock do you buy? What does your workspace look like? How many stations for each subassembly? Like all those things are dependent on a very wishy-washy, shruggy, arms up in the air. We don't really know what it's going to be. We kind of do, but we don't really know. So it's annoying, honestly.
For sure. And this is one of those topics people can get a master's degree in, like supply chain planner, like fulfillment planner is a master's degree worth of content.
Yeah.
But I think we can touch on a bunch of different topics here and spread out pretty thin and give people a good glimpse into how we think about it and how we choose to approach it here at Opula.
Yeah, with almost all of our production happening in-house. That's an important part of this. Like if you're outsourcing to a factory at, tens of thousands of units or hundreds of thousands of units, they're probably going to be managing all this. So this is very much in line of like mid-scale, getting up into the mass production range, or very much starting out prototyping range where you're just kind of getting your sea legs and starting to ramp up in manufacturing and doing it yourself.
Yeah. And for someone like just starting out hearing us, we're going to talk about some systems that we've built out of necessity that someone selling 5 items a month probably won't need. Yeah. So like take from this what you need.
Yeah. There might be way too much structure here. You also might be like, no, I need to hire SAP to write me an entire like, ERP suite. It's like, it depends on your scale.
For sure.
Yeah.
And like, you can use money to solve this problem as much as you want.
Yep.
And we play it pretty frugal here on this type of stuff. So I hope people listening find this useful.
Yep. Yeah, same.
All right. So in the first section of kind of the outline here is understanding your obligations. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple different things that go into that here. Like the most basic bare level thing is understanding how long it takes to build your products.
Yes. It's like, if you don't know what this is, you're done. Like you need to know how long it takes to make everything.
If you don't know, pause this episode.
Go buy a stopwatch, pull out your phone and go put on the stopwatch and time yourself doing it. And like ideally someone that isn't you doing it. So it's like an accurate representation of like or whoever's building it ultimately.
Yeah.
If it's you, if it's somebody else, whatever, and figure out how long everything takes. Cause that's literally the kernel for all the math you're about to do.
It drives everything.
Yeah.
You want to think like, well, how long does it take someone newbie? How long does it take someone like well seasoned to make something? What's the average time going to be? And when you have that number, run with it. Bonus points if you have that number and it's the sum of multiple steps you could break up and separate into tasks different people may need to do.
Right.
Because that's been super important for us before for like more precise labor allocation. But at this top planning level, you just need to know how long does it take to make the product.
Yeah, each individual product roughly. It can be easier, yeah, like down the road if you want to do other things, but at the very least, like how long does a lumen take to bake? You need to know that number.
And ultimately for us, we get these times through a lot of time trials. And with stopwatches, like what Steven just said, it all just goes into a spreadsheet and it's listed so that we know per SKU what the labor times look like.
There's also an awesome piece of software. I think it's called Live Split One, which is used by speedrunners for tracking how fast they are at doing different segments of a speedrun and like playing a video game. When we did our early trials, like time trials for V2 kits and stuff, I used Live Split One for like how quick could I make a motherboard through on the Lumen. And it was awesome. We'll put a link in the description. I think it's called that. If not, there'll be a link in the description of the software. But it's just like a web app you load up and you time yourself and keep track of it. It's great. So like use that. It's perfect for it.
It was hilarious to see Steven brag about his splits for like, oh, my feeder rail time is down to this, and now toolkit bags are taking this one.
Right, we should have live streamed it.
Yeah, we really should have. That would be fun. But obviously, you don't want to make everyone have the pressure of speed running software each time they build something. So just
yeah, exactly. It's a bit much to do it that way.
Assess it periodically and run with it.
Yeah, exactly.
So from labor times, the next segue then is into like the product lead time you might want to set in your point of sale software. So like, I just want to be precise in describing what this looks like at Opulo first. So we're aware of how long it takes to make something. And based off that, we will tag an item in our web store as 1 week lead time, 2 week lead time, what have you, all the way out to 6 weeks for some stuff.
Yeah.
And this is ultimately based off of that known assembly time, the production mix, like the ratio of widget 1 to widget 2 that we expect to see sold. And like how booked up we already are with outstanding orders.
Right. Yeah. And you can kind of see like, oh, by the time the order that came in yesterday is fulfilled, it's 3.5 weeks. It's like, okay, our 4 week lead time maybe is getting a little close there. Maybe we should bump it to 5. So you're also kind of looking at like realistically how do recent orders fall into buckets. You can kind of be like, crap, we kind of have to bump it if we want to still be able to ship on time.
If Opulo just sold lumens, for example, like, and say they took a day each, we knew we could make 7 per day per person on staff.
You mean per week? 7 per week per person?
Yeah, thank you. And if we start to sell more than 7 in that week, we're halfway through. It's time to make that lead time 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So this is not a static variable. It's a dynamic thing. You want to just keep assessing and changing as needed.
And we have kind of always dreamed about having this be a driven number. Like, is there a cell that we can have in an Excel sheet somewhere that just tells us, make the lead time this? And we're not there. And honestly, I think it's kind of great that we're not, because there's always some human decision going into this of like how things fall and like risk factor and a couple other things. It would be really nice to have it driven. Like it just has to be this, but it currently isn't. And I think that's a good thing for now.
I agree, because we need like a superhuman AI to consider all the variables correctly.
Right.
And like, because part of the variables are our sentiment, like, and how we feel about something. It's like, do we want to let this bespoke, rarely sold part delay this order if it's included?
Yep.
Okay, maybe.
Yep. And also like we don't have to change it if Steven's willing to come in for 4 hours on Saturday. Yeah. And it's like, oh, it'd be great to not bump it to 5 weeks or 3 weeks from 2 weeks or whatever it is. It's like, yeah, I can just do the override. No, I'll just brute force and keep the lead time. And sometimes that's nice to be able to do.
That comes up for us.
Yeah.
Hopefully less often than it used to.
It has been less often recently, which is good.
And it's an important thing to consider too, because your sales are partially driven by the lead time.
Yes. Yeah. Which is a weird, like self-regulating thing of like the higher your lead time, generally the less your sales will be roughly. But like if something ships next day, it's going to be way spicier for people thinking about buying it than, oh, it comes in a month. That's a harder sell. So like your quantity will be higher. It almost self-regulates. Like when you get ahead, if your sales are a little lower, longer lead time, you can bring your lead time down because there's fewer orders, but then suddenly your orders increase and then your lead time gets longer again. It's like, it's a lot.
It creates this, I'm going to say this a couple times, I'm sure, it creates this Sisyphean thing where like, cool, we worked and now we have more work.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's never going to be done.
It really never is.
To us, bringing the lead time down for an item is like the ultimate carrot on a stick.
It really is. Ships this week on the Lumen product page is like, I've had dreams. I like, there's nothing I want more. And also I feel like such a clown. Like sometimes, we'll say to the production team, like, man, it'd be, we're on track to get the lead time down. And I can feel like myself not even believing it. It's like, it might feel like that's true, but like realistically, it's just really hard to do it.
I think at this point, the team doesn't believe me and sometimes they just laugh.
It's really hard because we're growing as we're trying to bring the lead time down. And it's like, we're doing everything we can to keep up with the quantity, but it's really tough.
Yeah. Like you can't decide what you sell in a period of time. You can't decide when someone wants to put in a resignation. You can't decide when a YouTuber is going to feature your product in a video and make you explode.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, there's so many outside variables.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot. And one of the few knobs you have to be able to adjust is your lead time.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the few things you have to kind of be able to react immediately to what's happening in the world.
Some people will play this by putting their store out of stock. Like,
yes.
Etsy will even pause your store and make you fulfill your backlog if you're not if you're not meeting your promised lead times.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that they did that.
It's also kind of dreadful if you run an Etsy.
Sure. Yeah, that they dictate that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like maintaining legality. It's like making sure that you're shipping when you say you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we have a sentiment like we don't want to turn off sales. So
Yes.
Yes, it's a valve. You can change the flow. We're not going to turn it off.
Yeah, we should always make it possible to buy a Lumen, even with a lead time. Even if the lead time is very long, we should always make it possible to do it.
Yeah.
But it's a nice, like one of our guys went back to school, gosh, what, a year ago?
Something like that. Yeah.
Gosh, that's crazy. It's been a year. But like he left and went back to school and we bumped the lead time because we're like, oh, wow, we've lost like a third of our production capacity. It's going to take longer to build these things. It's a great reactionary knob.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, lead time is kind of the other chunk of this. These are kind of the two parts that go into kind of understanding what you're working with. What numbers do you have?
Yeah. And as every item will have a different lead time, some are more important than others, like replacement parts.
Yes.
In our system, if an item is tagged as replacement part, it has a 1-day lead time.
Yeah. It's ship this immediately.
Yeah. It shows up in this is a bright red hot potato.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can use it as a tool as well to like change how things look in the system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure. This is not that much of a leap here, but from knowing the item lead times, you can then derive an order lead time. The way we do it here is that we take an order, let's say it has 4 different line items in it, and we just look at it for the longest lead time.
Yes. Yeah. And this is not how it has to go. This is just what we've chosen to do. So our store policy is orders ship with the longest lead time of any item included in the order. So if you want your thing to ship faster, then you buy a 2-week lead time thing and a 4-week lead time thing, and you want them to ship separately, place 2 separate orders because it's 2 separate shippings because we're going to ship them separately. Mm-hmm. So this is just a thing we've decided to do on our store to simplify how things work. You might have a different policy. Like when we buy parts from like the 3D printers or whatever, they'll come at different times as other things. Maybe they're shipping from different warehouses. This depends on your policy, but this has worked really well for us for simplifying this just by making this choice and making this how we've decided to do shipping.
Yeah, it's kind of like the print farm scenario where there's 20 million variables, and the more you can pare it down, just the easier you can consider it.
Totally. Yep.
And like towards the shipping policy, it's your Bible. Like it's the thing you're going to keep coming back to. It's your North Star.
Yep.
And like it's just something you need to be able to point to the customers and tell them how to engage with you.
Mm-hmm.
It lets you set the rules of the game in a way that makes it comfortable.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
But for the lead times and how we calculate it, we take that longest item lead time and we just round it down to the nearest Friday because Opula ships stuff every Friday.
Yep.
And from there, that just derives us like a week number due date.
Yes.
So like a Lumen that Steven bought in January at the beginning of the month might be due week 4.
Mm-hmm. At the end of the 4th week of the year or the end of January, 4 weeks later.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And that's really simple because then we can work towards like the production batch labor time.
Mm-hmm.
And we look and see how many orders are due at the end of this given week number and like how much labor does it take to consume all that work.
Yep.
In knowing the number of orders due by the end of a given week and the number of labor hours it will require, you exactly know how to allocate labor.
Yep.
The way that looks is, at least for us, is we'll see, this week has 10 lumens in it and 40 trays of 8 mil feeders to make. And we will see the production mix. We'll see how it adds up to the labor coverage we had listed as like the max for that week. And we'll just send the troops out on it. I just export a pick list from our planner.
Yep.
And they go off to make it.
Right.
It's really clean.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. So the way that you're actually going through and doing this when you allocate this labor is you're looking at like how many hours a week do we have of work? And if the amount of hours we have in a week is less than the amount of stuff that's due that week, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
And like sometimes you'll be like, Steven, we have, 10 hours unaccounted for. Like, can you drop in? And then that's when we kind of make that decision. But then ideally, that's because we should have made the lead time longer before. Yeah. Or something else happened that made it, someone was sick or something like that. And that's kind of where that goes from. So that's where these things will go together. We now know what's due when. And because we know how long it takes to make each thing, we know how much time it goes into to make all the things that week. If that number is greater than the amount of time we have as a team, that's not good.
Yeah, you got overtime.
We're asking for overtime. We're hopping on the line. We're doing whatever.
Yeah, and it's like, it's such a preventable problem. Like, you can just always assign less work and have it done sooner.
Yep.
And start the next week's work sooner.
Yeah.
If you can get things more spread out by nudging your lead times proactively instead of reactively, you're going to be in such a better shape.
Yes. Yeah.
Like I think the job of like a production planner is to keep this smooth and feeling steady. Because like if I'm in this role doing it poorly, I can make people really stressed for almost no reason.
Yes. And it's really hard to estimate this correctly. Like it's very, very tricky to figure out because it's not always perfect. Like you might think, oh, okay, we have X number of people, 40 hours a week. It's not that clean cut.
Because like maybe all of the holes on the feeders for that week are undersized because the extrusion multiplier went to hell on your print farm.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Like you're going to be drilling stuff out. You can't really plan for that that well.
Yeah.
But if you give yourself a buffer and you don't bite off more than you can chew, it'll be a lot more okay.
And it's way better to assume that it will take a little bit longer and then you have excess capacity and you get going on the next week's build early than the other way around of feeling like you're behind.
Yeah.
Like plan around that.
Yeah. That was a great segue from production batch into like the labor section of this consideration. And that's labor availability.
Yes.
You have to seriously consider like how much time someone on production can spend doing assembly work. Like no one's 100% efficient.
Yep.
Like here at Opula, we don't necessarily count how much time someone spends at the print farm and deduct that from what we think they can do in a week. So we just kind of hedge as they're 80% capable.
Yes. And also like if I'm time trialing myself with speed running software, I'm hyper aware of how fast I'm going. If I'm in the zone on a random Thursday, I may not be going that fast. Like ideally, yes, you're always operating at that speed, but that's kind of crazy to always assume. Like we're not robots, we're people.
Yeah. And if someone building products themselves for themselves runs themselves that hard to fulfill orders, they're going to get burnt out.
Yes.
And if I am driving the production team to work at that furious rate constantly, they're going to get burnt out.
Yes.
Like, so people need time to have a Cliff Bar, use the restroom.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. So like
check up on DMs.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not going to be 100%. So like, don't assume that. I think like in your labor allocation, you have like an efficiency multiplier and we have it at like 0.7, 0.8 or something like that. Just to be sure that when our numbers coming out have some buffer in there.
And especially too, that can vary per person. You just want to be considerate of that.
Yep, exactly.
The other dimension of labor availability is just like each person has a different situation with the employer. So like we have students on staff at 20 hours a week. We have some part-time temps that come in as needed. We have a couple guys on full-time. We take all of those hours available per week and just look to see how much coverage we have for that week. And if we can lower lead times or need to raise lead times to meet our expectations.
Yep. Yeah.
And there's a lot of curveballs there still too. Because like no one can plan for being sick, but people can go on vacation and you have to account for that. There's also unexpected issues like someone's car broke down on the way in. Like it's your role as a production planner to be able to consume some of those types of things and not like have cascading issues from someone taking a personal day.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That is not a failure of the employee, but a failure of the planner to not add in. That's part of life.
Yeah.
That happens. Another thing that can help a lot with figuring out labor allocation is if you have some folks on part-time with flexible schedules, you can have them come in for a couple extra shifts to help make up for stuff. Like when I was in high school, I worked at a bakery, and if people were out on a vacation, there were opportunities to pick up a lot more shifts, and it was great. I wanted to work more. I wanted to get paid more and, have more time making money. So if you can find some folks that are, they're in school, they're working on something else, they're part-time, that can be so nice for kind of, oh, someone's sick. No worries. We'll have so-and-so come in, on Thursday when they wouldn't normally. And that helps smooth things over. So if you can figure out a setup like that, oh, it's wonderful. It's so nice. We just recently kind of dove into doing it this way, and like, it's excellent.
Can you imagine a school without substitute teachers where like the principal has to like.
Right. Or like all the kids are just like, oh no, my teacher's sick. We're not coming to school today.
Yeah, no, it's just not sustainable.
Yeah. That actually be sick for school.
I'd love that.
But no. Yeah, it's not sustainable for a lot of other things.
Yeah. And for a good long while, Steven and I were the substitute teachers.
Yes.
And we're trying to do that less and less so that we can focus on engineering and like the customer side of ops.
Yep.
So getting these part-time people on has been critical for freeing us up to focus on like just higher level like company things.
Yeah. Yeah. It is really handy. If you can find a setup that works with some folks, it's great. It's really nice.
It might sound obvious, but there's like a really closed loop relationship between labor availability and item lead times.
Mm-hmm.
So like the moment your labor availability for a given week is fully booked up, it's time to bump an item lead time or ask the team for overtime or bring up the hours of your part-time help.
Sure.
It's all interrelated.
Yes. Yeah.
And like, I think we've said it a couple different ways now, but overbooking the production system will just cause cascading problems that will put you or us in a hole that's really hard to dig yourself out of. And just, it's needless.
Yes. If you find that you're continually not hitting your weekly amounts, adjust your efficiency factor, because you're wrong. Like you should change how long things actually take, because like, providing everyone on the line is like chooching and, like working at the pace that they really should be, your estimates are off. Like if it's chronic, it's a you problem.
Yeah. I try to set a vibe on the production line where like there's a sense of urgency, but not stress. And like it can be chill and we have time to make jokes and banter because we're doing stuff and keeping our hands moving.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. That's super true.
Yeah. And like you want to keep it that way. Like it sucks to be stressed for lack of planning.
Yes. Yeah. That's just not fun across the board. It should, if it's never not feeling fun to be here, then there's like something is wrong. It shouldn't feel that way.
Yeah. It's, we have this joke that Steven's trying to make a fire where like just increase orders and I'm trying to put out the fire and like kill the backlog.
That's true. We constantly have a little bonfire burning and I'm trying to pour gasoline on it and Lucian's trying to put it out with a fire extinguisher. And like, that's our backlog is this bonfire that we have that we're trying to kill.
I remember one time you walked up.
You're trying to kill.
Yeah, I remember one time you walked up to me and you're like, should I post this video? I'm afraid it'll cause too many sales. And I just go, no, post it, you coward.
Well, I post it. And then like a week later, you're like, man, I wish you didn't post that video. It's like, it's the ultimate, like, it's the epitome of the inside us, there are two wolves meme. Yeah. One is a pyro. What's the?
I say one's a pyromaniac and one's a firefighter.
Exactly. One's a pyromaniac and one's a firefighter. It's like inside us, there are two wolves. There's the, oh my gosh, it'd be so cool to have a ship same week lead time, and also more orders.
Yeah. I remember one time we positioned ourselves where like the Lumen lead time was a 4 to 6 week thing.
Yeah.
And you would have a banger video ready to drop. And I was like, no, post it. I'll have time to hire someone if we need to.
Yeah. What a weird world we live in. It's so strange.
Yeah, it's really fun though.
It is fun, but it's just weird how it pans out. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it truly is inside us there are two wolves, the firefighter and the pyromaniac.
Oh yeah. And like moving on to the next topic here is like, it really helps to be able to visualize that. Like there's a tug of war here, and if you can't see it, you're fighting blind.
Yes.
So at least for us, with the system we use, which is Shopify, it lists all our orders in sequential order. For us, it's really tough because we don't know which order actually needs to leave the building first.
Right.
It's not based off sequential order because like order 1 might have a 6-week lead time item in it. Mm-hmm. And the order 2 placed within the hour of the other one will have a 4-week lead time order in it.
Yep.
Like that's an elementary level view of like how that can get annoying.
Yes. And in the default view, Shopify doesn't show you like the lead time because we're actually using a tag on the product to set our lead time. So it doesn't have a way to kind of collect them that way. But what they do have is this like full backend where you can automate all kinds of stuff. It's almost like GitHub CI, but for your web store. So we've been playing around with this a bunch, and that's ultimately kind of how we use things.
Yeah, and it's super powerful for us because every time an order is placed, this like automation will look at all of the different item lead time tags that the line items had, and it will tag the order with the longest lead time of the given items in the order.
Yeah.
And then from there, we have another CI-esque thing, kick it to a Google spreadsheet where it generates the due date of like that earliest Friday we should ship it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
And from there, we have a bunch of dashboards built out that we can like explain a little bit better.
Right. Yeah. And we have a huge TV above our desk cluster in the office that shows a Gantt chart of when an order was placed and when it needs to ship by, and a big ticker showing what the current date is. So we can see, oh, it's getting close to these 5 orders. These need to go out tomorrow. These need to go out whatever. Or like at what week increment does it ship out? Yeah. And so we get a very quick visualization of like, how are we doing? How much do we have? How much are we facing down right now?
And it's imperative to have something like that.
And automatic. When your quantity of orders is big enough where you can't handle each one that manually, all this automation stuff that Shopify just like lets us run, and it just automatically kicks it off, adds it to the sheet, updates the visual. It's so necessary to have a little system like that once you get to a certain quantity of sales, I think, or orders, I should say, really more so.
And it's that exact automation that makes what we do possible.
Yes.
It is so handy to have a Google spreadsheet that shows this Gantt chart, because we can also use it to list the number of orders due week 4 and how long it'll take. We can just make a pivot table that shows how many lumens we need to make that week, how many feeders we need to make that week, and what's the total sum of order. And just to be able to automatically go to a dashboard in Google Sheets that comes from this data, and it's hands-free.
Yeah.
Self-generating. It's incredible. I used to do this tediously by hand, almost just on paper.
Right.
And it became too much.
Yeah.
Too many orders.
We also don't have to write our own piece of software.
Yeah.
We do like 3 functions and like a VLOOKUP and whatever in Sheets, and it's just fully automatic. So it's like, it's not what's the joke is like Excel is the second best tool at everything.
Yes.
It's like, it's never the best thing at any task. Like custom software is always the best, but Excel's great for it's pretty good for every other task.
I've continually seen how like changing business needs would have broken software if I asked Steven to have made something to do this.
Right. Yeah, no kidding. If we had a custom piece, sometimes it's nice to have the flexibility until you like really know what you need and it's super not going to change.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the 3D printer versus injection mold analogy. It's like Excel is the ultimate 3D printer. It's quick to make changes, and it kind of scales. And injection molding scales infinitely, but it's really set in its ways.
And it could be so handy to just like delete a formula from a cell that was calculating an order's due date and just type what the due date needs to be.
Yeah, you can also just do evil brute force crap too if you have to. And like, depends. If you want to play that way, then it's great. It's a great tool.
Yeah, I'm really curious to know if there's tools that kind of sell products and manage assembly lead times in this like Gantt chart style way, like out of the box. That'd be super handy. Like, even for like a print farm management kind of software, or just a company that just sells prints.
Yes. Yeah. If any of y'all know of any software like that, of like managing lead times in this way, doing that kind of like order queue visualization syncing from Shopify that isn't Google Sheets or whatever, please drop us a note in Discord or send us an email, podcast@opulent.io, because this works really well for us, but we don't know what we don't know. We built this out of necessity.
Yeah. I bet there's a lot. I looked for tools around like kitchen management and like for chefs. It's like, I don't know. I just figured there'd be something out there.
Sure.
Similar things for like schools and like how many students can a teacher handle? Or,
right.
Like, allocating work. Like, I don't know. It's an interesting problem.
Yeah, it is. That Excel is the second best tool at, and we don't know what the first best one is.
Might just be too bespoke per enterprise.
Yeah. But we only recently got this visualization up. Before it was, you were kind of binning things and you would make a pick list, but we couldn't really see this graph. And recently you figured out how to make this like just awesome visualization of our outstanding orders and how long we have to ship them. And it's great. I love this view. It's so nice.
It's super handy. When this visualization shows you what you need to ship by the end of the week quickly, you can then just take that straight into your shipping software and create labels.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It all comes from that one place. So that's a really integral part of how we decide what to work on next. What's next most important? What homework assignment do we work on first, To
be really clear, I thought it'd be fun to say the types of visualizations I actually look at when planning production here.
Yes. Yeah. Because there's a few different things you use the sheet for.
Yeah. So there was that timeline we mentioned where there's the Gantt chart of if say we have 30 orders in a queue, it shows all of them and they're colored based off of how old the order is and you see the durations. That's a great view. I might even post some screenshots where people could see a little bit of what this looks like, sanitized, of course, but
sure.
People might appreciate that. Let me know. Another view we have that's super essential, I think I alluded to, was we have a table where like the leftmost column is the week number. After that is each SKU we need to make that week, followed by the labor it'll take to fulfill that given SKU.
Right.
And it's aggregated per week with how much labor that needs.
Yes.
That's like how do I think of that? It's just like the per week labor allocation planner.
Right. Because ultimately, the folks on the line making stuff don't give a rip a rice-a-roni about what order has what SKU.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter. Like we kind of, when thinking about what to make, it's like, how many lumens do we need this week? How many feeders do we need this week? It doesn't matter with the orders. Yeah. Like when it comes down to SKUs, it's like, they don't care what order number it is, So like there has to be some split from, Bilbo Baggins bought XYZ with this lead time.
Yeah.
They don't. What's the translation to? I need you to make this by Friday.
Yeah, I was only realizing in making this podcast outline that there's no view where I see how much labor an order takes. It doesn't matter.
That's interesting. Honestly, I think it's better for your mental health if you don't, because if we get whenever we get a huge order and you'd be like, oh, that's so much labor time, I think it'd make you really sad. Please don't build that view.
It'd be easy.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah. That takes me nicely, though. The other view I have is like per batch week number. I have the list of orders due.
Yeah.
So like for week 3, I have order 2700, 2701, 2729. Mm-hmm. And the next week, the following kind of thing.
Yeah.
Super handy because I just take that week and go into our shipping software and I select those labels.
Yep.
And if I'm feeling cheeky, I'll grab some extra orders from the following week. Or if we fell behind, I'll grab some orders for the previous week that didn't actually ship yet.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's a great view.
Yeah.
And then another view we use is per product, the number to make and like the % labor it uses, which is I use to see like the production mix.
Right. Like how many people do I need on feeders? How many people do I need on lumens?
Yeah.
Effectively.
So, exactly.
Okay.
So like as I'm describing it, I'm looking at a list of 29 different items we sell. And next in that list, right beside each item is the number we need to make and what % of labor it consumes out of a total % of 100.
Oh, I didn't realize you had that sheet, dude.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Oh, yeah, sure enough. What an incredibly cool. I never noticed this section of this sheet because I've looked at this sheet a lot, but I never looked over at the percentage usage. And that's pretty much thinking like, if someone's like, hey, Lucian, what should I work on next? You have a rough idea of where you should send them.
Yeah. So by creating a view that lets you get a sense of the production mix of your outstanding orders, it lets you understand like how much should you set the lead time of an item to be.
Right. Yep.
It's like let's say we had no backlog. I know that I only have time for lumens to take up half of our production labor because the other half's going to be other stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Super handy view that makes you make intelligible choices, sensible choices.
Yeah, exactly. And then on top of that, there's, some of the folks on the line have spent more time making certain things than others.
Yeah.
And we're going to want to try and optimize for them to be working on the thing that they're the fastest at or the best at or have the best eye for, or like doing the most or whatever. And that's yet another variable that it would be nice to optimize for of like, okay, so, we only have one person that's really good at this thing. We're going to have to, maybe someone doesn't know how yet. So we have to teach them how to build some other thing or something along those lines, or have them learn from OHI. But yeah, so that's yet another variable there that gets messy. But I mean, I think what you've done is really narrow this down into like, this is one like Google Sheets document that one of the sheets, like almost like tabs, is all of the stuff from Shopify. And then you're just doing a lot of like importing ranges and VLOOKUPs and pivot tables and stuff on that big sheet of data of like pretty much our outstanding orders, and doing a lot of math in other sheets to kind of figure out how should we work on this? What's the best way for us to tackle this outstanding work that we have? And I think it's, from my limited view of like this company and like how this works, this feels integral. Like, I don't know how you would operate a thing where you have a lead time and multiple SKUs like this without a document like this. Like, I don't know how that would happen.
Yeah. I think every venture has figured out some way of doing this, or maybe it's just chaos.
Maybe it's just chaos.
Yeah.
Like when we had only V2s, we would just ship them as fast as we could. And when we're like, oh no, and we bumped the lead time, but we didn't have any tool like this. We literally just looked at our Shopify queue and we knew it was all the same lead time. And we just made sure it wasn't older than XYZ, number of weeks or whatever. But then you have other SKUs. It just gets so messy so quick.
There's a couple paradigms a company can operate in where like this gets so much simpler.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we're ahead on orders.
Oh,
like the dream is like, I know what the production mix is and we're ahead. So like if lumens are 50% of it, and I know the average number sold per month, I just tell Adam to go work on 30 lumens.
Right.
And because we have 30 in inventory.
Sure.
At Opulous history, we've had lumens awaiting buyers on the shelves like twice.
And I think each time we had it, it was like right before a launch and we like sold all of them in like the next hour.
Yeah.
We've never actually fully had no lead time, which is both a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
It's like very cool, but it's also so frustrating.
It's been intentional because we didn't want to hire. We only really hired in the last few years based on like full-time.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to hire an extra full-time person. So we'd always just run just enough labor, supplementing Steven and I where needed.
Yes. Yeah. It really gets to a point where like, it's interesting because we don't want to hire when we don't know for sure we'll have the work for them. And sometimes, we'll get a huge wave of orders or whatever. And we're like, is this a flash in the pan? Does this justify hiring? And the worst thing ever is to hire them and be like, oh, okay, we can't keep them on anymore. Like that sucks.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a tough balance. But then you get to this magical point where like after you sell X number of machines or just make X number of money a month that pays for your like minimum monthly obligations of like what you need, it gets much easier to justify hiring someone else to help. Yeah. So once you kind of get to a certain point where it's a little easier to break even, hiring someone else gets a lot easier to do. And the flexible labor, like it's actually very hard to bring your lead time down because it means committing to paying someone and betting on these future orders in a risky way that you don't want to potentially have to lay them off or fire them, or we're probably laying them off at that point. I don't know. We've never had to do it, but it's hard to do it.
Like for us, how it's going to look is we kept some of the part-time helps hours higher than normal to bring the lead times down after like a holiday period.
Right.
And it's because you have to plan for it. Like it's not just going to happen.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's not just going to happen, but it takes money and it takes commitment and hiring to be able to bring it down.
There's that flywheel effect too. You mentioned where like, as you work to bring the lead time down, it's going to go back up because people are like, I can get it sooner.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
It's a fricker of a project.
Yes. Yeah. We did not earn our explicit tag on iTunes today. Well done. Well done.
Near miss.
It's a fricker of a project.
Yeah, it's a heck of a project.
That's funny. I like that. Yeah, it is very difficult. Like there's a lot more going on under the hood than just like, we'll just bring it down. It's like, well, that would mean hiring someone that in order to bring the lead time down, you need to have so much more labor to bring it down drastically that you then will have nothing for them to do after you kill the backlog. And then you'd have to let that person go. Yeah. Like, and I'm just not willing to do that.
This is why people love to just throw things to contract manufacturers because they're making it someone else's problem.
They're dealing with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, a contract manufacturer might have 20 million different projects they can just move labor onto. They'll have one project that is in peak demand and one's tapering down, and they can just, by having more projects at the facility, they can just better allocate labor.
Which is probably why Opulo should start like a Nerf blaster, like Etsy store.
Yeah, we actually joke about that.
We sometimes joke about it. Yeah, because like that's something that like with any extra labor that we have, we could just put it towards some other thing that would make us money, but is not urgent.
Yeah.
Right. Like we could have a whole separate Nerf blaster store. I say this because Lucian's super into Nerf and is part of the community. But like, let's say we were to do that, we could just have those folks, if Lumens, they're ahead, just make more Nerf blasters, and then we turn that store on because we don't mind turning that store off.
Yeah,
it's an option to do it.
Yeah, the dream of having something less lucrative, we don't mind having labor be put towards when we want more labor than needed.
Yep,
that's great.
That still pays for that person to be there.
Yeah,
like that would be great. But right now, it's like it's all. And again, this gets easier the more you grow because once you get past a certain number of sales, it's easier to pay for the labor to make it.
Yeah.
That's hard. That's the thing that gets easier with scale. So,
and I'm sure someone from GE who makes generators would call that like a naive approach, but it sounds nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is all an artifact of the way we're choosing to play this.
Yeah.
You know, the flexibility we have with running our online and changing things quickly and all that kind of stuff. It's all an artifact of that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. It's a good peek into how we think about and engage with it. The visualizations definitely help a ton.
Yeah.
You need a flashlight if you're going to like walk through the dark here. There's so many outside variables you don't understand. You need some way to track what you can control.
Yes. Yeah. What do we actually care about? What you care about as a production manager is, what do I tell the line to work on?
Mm-hmm.
Now, all the techs we have working on the line, what do they come in on a Monday? All right, Lush, what are we doing?
Yeah.
You need to have an answer for them. And that's what the sheet is answering.
Yeah. And that's not even getting into like, okay, that week I need 10 lumens, and we're not getting into who does what subassembly.
Oh my gosh.
Should be its own other episode.
Yeah. Truly.
We'll save for later.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot.
But yeah.
And I'd like to thank this episode's sponsor, PCBWay. We use PCBWay for all of our prototype boards, and we get beautiful PCBs in-house in under a week that we use for validating to make sure that our designs are good and we're ready to go into full production. They always come out beautiful, and they also, on a handful of occasions before, caught silly, stupid mistakes that I've made, making sure that I actually wanted to place the order for the board that I did, which has saved us a tremendous amount of time, making sure that we're actually getting what we want in the mail in just under a week. Thank you so much to PCBWay for sponsoring this episode.
The next thing I wanted to move on to talking about here is like the supply chain management side of it,
which is the whole first part before the orders come in.
Depends on a chicken or the egg, right?
I guess they're both constantly running.
Yeah. So the big, bold, red lettered thing here is avoiding stockouts.
Yeah.
The production manager's job is to keep labor being able to be productive.
Yes.
You have to be able to keep products going out the door.
Yeah.
Don't want to look like a big dumb idiot because you ran out of something.
That's the thesis. That's the subtitle for this this entire. You don't want to look like a big dumb idiot because you ran out of something.
Yeah. The most critical role of a like supply chain manager is maintaining an adequate inventory to prevent delays.
Yes.
You need to be keenly aware of stock levels of your items, and especially the ones with the longest lead times.
Yes.
For example, for us, feeder wheels take 6 weeks to make before we even talk about shipping. If I notice we have 3 weeks of stock left, we're screwed.
Yeah, we're super screwed. Yep.
And like, I've had to spend money to solve problems and manifest more feeder wheels or something like that before. And like, that can suck.
It can.
You don't want to do that.
You really don't want to do that.
Like the joke I'll have here is like, the work to get more of something is the same whether you're behind schedule or not. Like the act of buying something it's a known quantity of labor.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to just do it early, preemptive.
Yes. Yep. If you have the cash to do it.
Yeah.
Cause like some people will, depending on your business and your model and your cash flow, like the sales you have from an order might literally pay for that order, which is not how we play it. Like the sales from like a while ago pay for the lumen that's being built today.
Yeah.
And that's a much easier way to play it. But just like we're kind of like hand to mouth with labor, you might be that way with cash flow.
Yeah.
And it may be really difficult to be able to buy that stuff early.
And like, this is not fiduciary advice, but there's things you can do to alleviate that problem here too. Like you can get a line of credit with your vendor. You can get a line of credit with a bank. You can purchase on net terms.
Yep. Net 30, net 90. You can even get net 120.
Yeah, it goes all the way out to a year I've seen sometimes. But
yeah,
that's for GE building generator parts.
Yeah. Yes.
GE's probably not listening here.
Yeah.
Or at least I hope not.
That'd be interesting.
Because at the end of the day here, as I've probably said before, keep the programmers programming. Like we need to be able to make product. Like the supply chain needs to be able to keep the materials fed to the production line to do meaningful work.
Yep.
At the risk of sounding obvious, it's the most important thing.
Yeah. And it's also a tough balance because you can over-index on this and put a crazy amount of cash into stock. Like, let's say we had like, I don't know, 8 months worth of stock in-house. That's ludicrous. That's a lot of cash tied up in inventory, which is like, if you're confident in sales, it's like, yeah, sure, we'll move this. Like, we know that we'll move all this stuff, but we have a ton of cash tied up in the meantime that we could be putting into like a money market account or something. Yeah. Like, that's not a great use of money. In the meantime, it's nice to have the liquidity. It's nice to have an investment vehicle instead of tied up in inventory. So it's a balance. As with all things in this category, in business running in general, I think you have to have enough that you're not freaked out about how much you have and that you're going to stock out, but also not so much that you're tying up tons of your money.
Yeah. And that's why, like, at a larger company, even at a smaller company, maybe it's one person talking to themselves, even it's the role of a supply chain planner to talk to the executive team and the financial planners of a company to understand what they're willing to accept between overstocking and understocking to like minimize cost and risk.
Yeah.
It's a balance. Yeah. Everyone's going to be different.
Yep. Yeah.
Just in time manufacturing is kind of like been getting a lot of flack lately, especially during COVID. People saw that it was a bad mantra to be chanting mindlessly.
Yeah. Especially when you can't just buy it and have it arrive exactly when you expect it to. It's like, yeah, it might not come for a very long time.
Yeah.
I sleep better knowing that we have a lot of stock in-house. Not too much, but like I know that we have a good number of machines worth of stock in-house. And if something goes wrong, we have time to figure it out. Mm-hmm. So like just in time to a point.
That's another one. Where do you draw the line? Yeah. Do I give myself time for a vendor to make a long lead time item wrong and react to that?
Right. That's tough. Now if it's 6 weeks to make it wrong, a week to say, hey, you made this wrong, another 6 weeks to make it right, plus shipping time. I mean, we might be talking about 3 months there. Mm-hmm. Or longer, 4 months. I mean, like, are you buying stuff 4 months ahead of time? That's a long time ahead. You might change your sales quantity halfway through that. Suddenly something might happen and you suddenly have to make a lot more machines. And then you call them up and say, JK, I actually need a lot more than this. It gets really messy there too. So yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of the advice here is best saved for a longer episode. But like, I think some top line notes on this one for people listening would be like, if something's cheap, carry a year or two of it.
Yeah.
Like M3 by 8 bolts. I just buy enough to not have to think about it for a year. It costs us a couple $100 to have a year's worth and not risk that stocking out.
Yep. Easy.
Fasteners, a year of inventory.
Yep.
Expensive motors for the machine or linear rails. Yeah, we carry a couple months of inventory for that. Yeah. We don't want to sit on a year of inventory of linear motion equipment because like, what if we want to make the machine bigger?
Right. Well, and that's another part of it too, is like, we're always changing things.
Yeah.
So it's also, what's the risk that we're going to change it? Like, will we always need like an M3 by 8 socket head bolt? Yes.
Because we know how many we
Well, yeah. And then it's like, oh, well, if we have a lot in stock, are we going to design around that? And that becomes part of it too. But you know, if you know that you want to change stuff frequently, it's nice to keep a smaller amount in stock so that you can more freely make design changes and not worry about consuming old inventory. So it's nice to do that as well. It's definitely another part of it.
Yeah. In avoiding stockouts, and like, there will be some that happen to you because of unforeseen issues. It's really helpful to maintain good relationships to your suppliers.
Yeah.
Like for us, it's preferable to have vendors we talk to rather than faceless entities.
Yes.
Because they can move mountains for you. I think tips for maintaining good relations is better saved for a later episode, but do what you need to do to like make these vendors want to like help you solve a problem.
Right.
Like there's been issues where like the nozzle holder for the lumen, like the 2 parts of it came in out of spec. And I told the vendor, because they're our homies and they want to do right by us.
Yep. They
expedited it for us. So like, it's really helpful to make sure these vendors are on your side and they know that your success is shared with them.
Yep. Yeah. Because this is not a fully, you control this situation. You can't just be like, yeah, I'll just order it so that there's enough time for the lead time. Sometimes your vendor messes up.
Yeah.
Sometimes your vendor nukes you from orbit, which has happened to us a few times. And sometimes they're not amicable to helping out. And like, you have to have backup plans.
For sure. Like,
yeah.
And I try, like the nozzle issue, I try to approach that with humility. Like I look to see, did my design drawing communicate the need and the intent?
Yep.
And if it didn't, crap, my bad.
Yeah.
And I explain to them what I need and I tell them how to resolve it.
Yep.
And that's so much better than like yelling and screaming.
Oh yeah. That's never reasonable. It's never reasonable.
Yeah. Or like another anecdote here is FedEx lost all of our cables during COVID.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That was like our second order ever of parts. Cause we bought that first round for launch day.
Yeah.
And then we sold those out very quickly. And then we're like, okay, we need to rebuy. It was that order, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Jeez. I remember that now. Yeah.
But luckily we had made a really good rapport with that vendor because we were using them through prototyping.
Right.
And because they were so invested in the story of like this pick and place machine and what it was going to do for the world, they went up to bat for us and like we yelled at FedEx. They yelled at FedEx.
Yep.
They initiated a reproduction order in case the box got lost.
Yep.
Like, a vendor on your side is wind in your sails, and it's really useful.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was huge. So yeah, I mean, a lot of this is like making sure that the supplier side is managed well. And if something goes wrong, you've got an ally in them. You guys feel like a team. You feel like you're working together. They're going to go to bat for you, winning your sales. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And that's going to help make it so you don't stock out of stuff.
Like the more you can communicate with these vendors, the better. And like, there's plenty of tools that'll help you do that too. So like we have a lot of tools at Opula used for inventory tracking and like management. And like those will help you maintain a better relationship because you know what you're doing more. If you're more organized, you're going to be more clear as a communicator.
Yep.
So like for us, we have safety stock thresholds and inventory management software for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if we didn't have safety stock thresholds, we would be chickens overhead cut off again. It'd be nutty.
We'd be purely reactionary.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, like this software can tell you, hey, Lucian, we're going to run out on, this day or whatever. It'll tell you like, hey, we're going to be out soon. In knowing the lead time, you should buy more by this day. Like it gives you the deadline.
Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. It's critical.
And for the tool we use, it even tells us like, you had this lead time listed, but the last time you reordered, it took this long.
Really? I didn't know it did that.
Yeah, it's handy.
Wow. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Yeah.
Yep. So, and like, that's a tool that costs us $200 a month. For people listening that aren't at that scale, like just think about what simple systems you might need to help you manage avoiding stockouts. Like maybe it's that when a bin is low, like you flip it and it's red.
It's like a Kanban system or a 2-bin system. But even if you're using software that isn't like a fancy paid thing like we're doing, like inventory is an awesome piece of software. You could have a calendar event every Monday morning, which is check inventory. And all you do is you just scan through your inventory account in inventory and make sure that you have enough. Like there are ways you can quickly implement a system like this, kind of jank, but like good enough that still is going to make sure you don't stock out.
It's funny you brought that up because for me, every Monday, it's inventory day.
That's right. Yeah.
Whether it's 20 minutes of work, a quick gut check, or a couple hours of vendor communications, every week I look at our inventory and make sure we're where I thought we were. Mm-hmm. I check the bins to make sure there wasn't some crazy attrition that surprised me.
Right. Does it look like there's 40,000 of this thing in this bin?
Yeah. I feel good just looking at it.
Yeah.
Whether I needed to or not, I don't want to look like a big dumb idiot because I missed that we're all out of set screws.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
So that's like a little bit on the supply chain management side. There's plenty more, like we said. There's been episodes prior and in the future about this, but
I think it was like episode 2. It was like ordering stock or something.
Yeah, it's beginning to get to the point where I can't remember every episode we've done.
Yeah.
But within the paradigm of keeping up with orders, that's a great little bit of excerpt on it.
Mm-hmm.
It brings us nicely to like our lessons learned and final thoughts here.
Mm-hmm.
I think ultimately the biggest thing that I've learned is the importance of a buffer, and also having our support team, Mitchell, over communicate with the customers.
Mm-hmm.
By having all this buffer time, it just gives us that breathing room we need.
Mm-hmm.
By factoring that everyone's at 80%, there's time to work hard if we need to. There's time to relax a little bit if it's slower orders.
Or call us in if we really need to hop on the line. That helps too.
By having that buffer time too, it gives people time to be slow at something. It gives them time to pick up something they're not used to doing on the line.
Yep. And doesn't make it feel feverish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool, calm, collected is how I like to run it.
Mm-hmm.
So buffer has been really important for that.
Yep.
And that same buffer is when we're done with the week's work early, it's what lets us pull ahead.
Yeah.
Assembly times will vary, but because you buffer it in, it lets you just always bite off a little bit more than you thought you would.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice to do that. Better than the other way around.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the same work either way. You might as well just be proactive.
Right.
The other one is the benefit of like over communicating with customers.
Mm-hmm.
If we know there's going to be a delay in 4 weeks, it's just better to let them know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Always. This happened in that order you were just talking about where the cables got lost in our second order. We sent an email to all customers in this. I think is like the only time we've ever done that, or like there was like one other time with like a few people or something where we're like, hey, it's going to be late because we lost the shipment and we've done everything we can. And like, ideally you don't have to do that, but you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And we also, in the confirmation email, we're talking about how Shopify has that flow, like kind of like automation system.
Yeah.
We also make it so that the confirmation email that the customer gets tells them the lead time that we calculate. So it's nice in that we're also being very explicit with the customer about like, this is when you can expect to see it that's nice too, so that they know what to expect. You know, they don't have to go through and read all the terms of service of like, this is our shipping policy, to know when they can expect to get it.
Yeah, in reality, the policy is something that we can point back to, but most people aren't going to read it unless there's an issue.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So it's better to be very vocal about it. And like, that's why we put it in the email. We literally tell them in the email.
Just out of respect for the customer too. Like, imagine they wait 4 weeks for something and they think they're going to have it ship at the end of that 4th week just to learn it needs 2 more weeks.
Yeah.
I'd rather tell them, hey, we think it's going to take 6 instead of 4 within a couple hours of ordering that thing. If we know that's going to be the case, tell them early.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
And it makes us be a lot more relaxed if they respond and say, oh, that's fine. Thanks for letting me know.
Sure.
Most people are going to say that.
Yeah.
That's just, if you can respect them, they're going to be gracious.
Yep.
What are the other takeaway? We've also seen in doing production now for a while, it's so much easier to keep up with orders if we batch things together.
Yeah.
To a point at least, but we don't want to make one lumen beginning to end and then make the next. We learned in the Civil War era that that's not how we do things.
Right. Yeah.
Like you make the butt of a gun and then pass someone else off the butt to install the barrel.
Yeah.
We don't quite have enough labor here at Opulo to have one person make Y gantries and only Y gantries. So instead we just batch things in like bites that are reasonable for us, where like we'll tell the line to make 10 lumens. We'll have someone make 10 Y gantries, the other person make 10 X gantries.
Right. Because if you're going to go through the whole effort of like getting all the parts for it and everything, it's easier. And also like it gets harder with the smaller this number is, the less efficient you are. The bigger it is, the less flexible you are. Because if we want to make 200 lumens in a batch, okay, now we need 200 machines worth of parts, 3D prints. This is all inventory we have to keep in-house. This is how long it will be till we have another lumen we can ship.
Yeah.
And we need to ship every week. So we kind of have to go, we decided to do this, but like we decided to do like, okay, how much can we make in a week is kind of the way that we've baked this out. So you don't want to go too big because now you're tying up money again. You're not shipping for months or whatever. Like depending on how big it gets, but too small, you're inefficient. So again, a balance.
We closed out V3 production with a 20-piece build. And by the end of it, we had like nowhere to put anything.
Yeah, it was so full. Yeah.
But maybe you make something tiny if you're listening.
Yeah.
And it's super chill to just make a million of something.
Yeah, sure. Yep, absolutely. Like when I was making all the paste extruder kits.
Yeah.
I did 20 of them in a row and we're restocking with another 40 or whatever. And yeah, it's going to be 40. And I'm going to just burn a whole day and I'm just going to make 40 of them. Because like I can make 40 in a day. So why wouldn't I just do all of them at once, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
The other, I think I've said this many times already, but just stay on top of the product lead times. That's another key takeaway here. Keeping them up to date based off of current and future labor capacity, as well as cognizant of what sales look like now and what you think they might be like in the future is really the kernel of it. Because if you're on top of that, you can just prevent so many problems from rolling downhill.
Yeah. So sometimes we're like, you know, we'll look at what the lead time is and we're like, okay, if we sell, it's like, I'm trying to think about exactly how this pans out, but it's like, if we sell 3 lumens in the next 4 hours, we need to change the lead time or whatever it is, right? It's like we're about to roll over into the next week. It's like a Friday afternoon or something. And we're like, okay, as long as we don't sell 3 or 4 or whatever the number is, it's like, okay, this is our limit. And we have to kind of be careful. And if we can pop over to the next, okay, now we're good. Now we're in the next week.
And it'll be the case where you're aware of that. You're seeing that that's the case. I forget to update the lead time. And now suddenly Steven and I are committed to being on production for half of next week.
Yeah, exactly.
That was actually optional. We didn't need to put ourselves in that spot. I should have just updated the lead time.
Yeah. So that's why it's handy to keep an eye on it and check it regularly. Maybe this is a reason, maybe not for full automation, but like maybe it sends us an email of like, hey guys, you're getting close. If number hours in week greater than X, whatever, send email to Steven and Lucian. Check your lead times.
Yeah. If we just said, for example, there's 80 hours of available regular production labor, a customer is capable of buying more than 80 hours worth of work.
Yeah. One order
in one swoop
and that's happened before.
Yeah.
Where we're like, doing well, stuff feels like we're on track for our current lead time and everything. And then a monster order comes in and we're like, well, okay, that's actually a lot. How are we going to make this work? And then we have to rearrange things or whatever, however it pans out.
That's why this stuff is flexible.
Yeah.
Communicate with the customers.
Yep.
Have a way of tracking this.
Yeah.
You need to know if you're hosed with too much work. If you don't realize you're hosed, you have
another much bigger problem. Bring it down to the problem you can't defeat, which is you might just be hosed. but at least you should know that. At least inform yourself about how like a blanks creek without a paddle. Yeah. Man, this episode really wants to have an explicit tag. But yes, you should know how screwed you are.
Like, it almost sounds silly to say this following up on it, but another lesson learned is like it's really nice to scale gradually.
Yeah.
I remembered when we launched a V3 as a semi-assembled machine, we were just like, oh, we just do it now.
Yeah. We were definitely Icarus flying too close to the sun, and our wings melted off that first week of production. I regularly write like kind of like journaling. I just like write down about like stuff that happened a certain day or whatever. And I was going back through a couple weeks ago and I read the post I made when we were doing V3 launch. And I remember reading of like, it was so stressful because like nothing was working. We were not testing the right things. Stuff was not panning out. We were building up the whole machine to test it. Like we were way over our skis on that one. But like in like 3 days, we like stopped everything, reorganized exactly how we did it, went back in and it was fine. But our eyes were a little bit bigger than our stomach on that. It was funny reading back of like how flustered we were.
Yeah, that was a lot. Building the whole Lumen to test was not ideal.
Yeah, it was not ideal.
It was like, we might as well just ship it assembled at that point.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that was a big learning. So going gradually, sometimes you have to have a step function, like from doing a kit to a semi-assembled thing. Inherently, there's a step function there, but like give yourself some time and grace to facilitate it, because if you're changing a lot of stuff, your lead time's going to get nuked. Like you have to make sure that you can support a longer lead time there. Ideally, you've already made it a lot before you started selling it, which is what we did for V4, and it was great. We had already been making it for like 3 weeks by the time we started selling it. And that was great. We already knew our lead time because we had made a ton of them already. So yeah, it helps a lot. You're scaling up slowly and like, you know, working out the kinks before you're committing to having all the kinks worked out.
Yeah. No, it's funny too, because like the margins on our products can afford us the ability to rebuy increasingly more than we did the previous time.
Yes.
But we're not playing the paperclip game. We don't want to rebuy at this rate that we don't have labor for.
Oh no, Lucian. You just reminded me about the paperclip game.
Yeah, you should play it again.
You've ruined my entire evening.
And the evening of anyone else listening.
It's so... If you don't know what it is, don't Google it. It's great.
Google it.
It's like baby Factorio. It's like business oriented Factorio.
That's all I'm going to say on it.
Yeah. It's such a stupid. It's like Cookie Clicker had a baby with Factorio.
But yeah, like be patient with yourself. You don't have infinite horsepower. Like let this stuff grow and let processes adopt.
Yeah.
Over time.
Yep.
And I think, as we said before, getting ahead can be wishful thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
I try to have us not beat ourselves up over the idea of getting ahead and not having it happen.
And sometimes we'll say like, oh, we could just, you know, be real grubby and just work all weekend. Like you and I will just come in on the weekend and we'll just like work like crazy hours over the weekend, and or like even just I'll pop in for an afternoon and, you know, work a little bit or whatever. And you recently kind of had this realization and share this with me of like, that doesn't really move the needle. Like once you get to a certain scale, you cannot just manifest a smaller lead time. Like it takes inertia and time and like other people to bring your lead time down. You can't just brute force it anymore. And we used to be able to do that. And now the quantity is such that like you and I have a hilariously small impact on the lead time. If we come in, it's only for like little emergencies that we matter, you know, in how we can contribute.
Our time is better spent making the process quicker, easier, improving yield.
That too. But like just doing something that doesn't scale very well just to bring it down is like, that's not even really an option. Yeah.
If we helped out for half time for a week, we're not making it better in 3 weeks.
We're really not.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only solution is like hire or increase the lead time. That's kind of the only knobs you have.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Just realize that.
Yep.
That's how we feel about it.
And as much as I like to say, yeah, we're doing well, it's going to come down. I've said that so many times. Yeah. I can't say it without feeling like a bit of a clown. It's like, we're always working towards it. And like, to be fair, we have put a couple things in place recently that I think will afford us to be able to do that. But like, we're also selling more machines. it's the Sisyphean thing. Every time we scale up and we're like, yeah, we should do this thing to make it faster or better, we just get nuked by more orders, which is a great problem to have. But like, I don't know. I'd love to have ship same week. It's just you expect that might not happen for a while if you're doing the same kind of thing that we are here.
And at least for us, this is kind of normal, I think, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Like take a Tormach machine, like a big CNC machine.
Sure.
For example. Sometimes that's a 13-week lead time.
That's
if you
crazy.
If you want to buy a big high-end Akuma CNC mill, vertical machining center, 4 month, 6 month lead time.
Really?
Yeah. Let's say you're Japan Public Transit Authority wanting to buy trains. You're going to be told a 2-year lead time.
Sure.
Not everything can ship next day.
Almost as long as STM32s during COVID. Some of them were like literally like 7-year lead time.
Oh yeah.
Or something on chips. I mean, it was just a crazy fluke, but yeah. I mean, this is kind of par for the course for some of these things, but then there's also 3D printers you can buy that ship next day.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, where do we fall in this mix? We're also relatively a small organization. We're trying to, grow and scale, get to the point where we can bring it down. So it depends a lot on what you're trying to do and who your market is. Do they care? Is this par for the course? Do you want to not do what's par for the course and stand out in your field? Yeah. A lot of things to think about.
Like the market will kind of decide for you. Like if this way we operated wasn't acceptable to the consumer, then like we'd probably have more labor, or we'd probably sell in batches or something like that.
Or we would sell fewer of them and then we'd get ahead.
Yeah.
And then they would be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is a weird thing.
Mm-hmm. It's all closed loop. Feels kind of Sisyphean.
Mm-hmm.
But at the top of it, this is how we think about keeping up with orders.
Yep.
I think we do a pretty good job of it.
Yeah, I think we do. And it's also important to say that like you do have, I don't remember off the top of my head, but there is like some legal responsibility for fulfilling the ship time that you say.
Yeah.
So like, this is not just you should do this. This is like, you have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
If you're telling the consumer, hey, it's going to ship in this amount of time. I don't remember exactly what it is off the top of my head, and I don't want to say what I don't feel very confident about here.
Yeah,
but I'll put a link in the show notes about what this law is about. Like when you say you're going to ship with a certain amount of time, you have to fulfill that. Or if you don't explicitly say it has to be within 4 weeks or something like, I don't remember exactly what it is, but you have a legal obligation to follow what you say. So this is necessary. I mean, this is something you have to do. It's not up for debate. And it's also like super rude to not, not ship when you say you will. Is like, just don't do that. Do what you say you're going to do.
Even from a reputation perspective.
Yeah.
If we told people it ships next day and it's always 4 weeks on average, like we're just burning reputation needlessly.
Yeah, exactly. That's just silly.
I'd much rather, it's so much better just set expectations
Yep.
and meet them or exceed them a little bit.
Yep.
Rather than continue. It's foolish to just continuously disappoint. Like,
Yeah.
Ship in the lead time you say you will.
Yep.
Make it longer if you need to.
Exactly. Yep.
Keeping up with orders is the name of the game.
Yep.
And I hope everyone listening has taken away something that can help them with this.
Yes. And if you've experienced stuff like this, if you have a production line that you're dealing with, please let us know about how it goes. If you're listening going, those clowns, why don't they just XYZ? Tell us what XYZ is, because I want to know why you think we're clowns and why we're not doing whatever. Like drop in the Discord, link in the description, send us an email, podcast@opula.io. Tell us why we're clowns, or tell us how you do it. We don't have a huge sample size of like how other people do this kind of thing.
I would love to get nuked on this.
Yeah. Oh, nuke us from orbit, please.
Yeah.
Please make me and Lucian feel stupid. Please make us feel silly with some, panacea, golden bullet, awesome solution here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like before, anyone said that we are aware of ERPs, but I don't think the scale we're at is even relevant.
I don't know if it would justify it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would. But like, are we silly for using Excels really? It's like, is there a better tool for doing this? Is there like some software everyone uses of like, it just tells you exactly when you have to ship this stuff? Tell us, please.
Yeah.
Not about getting ahead on lead time. That I think we've made our bed here of like, it's just hard. But in terms of tracking this stuff and setting up all these systems, if there's something better, please let us know.
Yeah. Or if you have a spreadsheet template you really love and you're proud of, just post it in our Discord.
Yep.
I want to see it.
Yep. There's a specific thread for this specific episode. You can drop it in.
Yeah. And I'm going to be on top of this one because I'd love to hear people's thoughts on this.
Yep.
It's what I think about a lot here.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
And Steven, I hope you learned something.
I did. I learned about new tabs you have in Coefficient that
Hell yeah.
in our tracking software that I didn't know about.
There you go. All right, folks, that's it for this one. I hope you learned something. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. It helps us out a ton. You can learn more about Opulo at opulo.io, as well as YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. You can email us at podcast@opulo.io with questions or comments on the episode. And to keep up to date with the podcast in Opulo, sign up for our newsletter where we write blog posts and conduct customer interviews with other folks building open hardware. That's it, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya. Okay,
Cool.
that'll work.
Great.
We're allowed to be awkward. Mitchell will merge what you just said and my spiel from the initial recording.
Yeah, Mitchell, that's probably enough clay to mold into something usable.